You did the workout. You even looked decent in the mirror after, for once, the kind of moment you'd normally photograph. You opened the camera. You held the pose. And then you put the phone down without posting anything, because some quiet, exhausting calculation ran in the back of your head about who would see it and what they'd think, and the whole thing curdled before you even chose a filter. The philosopher who would have found that moment fascinating, and would have had zero patience for the part where you put the phone down, is Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche, the 19th century German philosopher who wrote in short, explosive bursts of aphorism rather than tidy arguments, spent a lot of his work diagnosing exactly this kind of self-censorship. And on the genealogy of morality, he draws a distinction between what he calls master morality and slave morality. Master morality, in his account, starts from a person's own sense of what's good and admirable and simply acts from it. Slave morality, by contrast, starts from resentment. It defines itself against what other, more powerful people might think, judge, or envy, and organizes itself around not provoking that judgment. Not posting the photo because you're managing an imagined audience's reaction is, in Nietzsche's blunt terms, exactly that second move. His more famous idea, the will to power, gets misread constantly as a slogan about domination over other people. What Nietzsche actually meant was closer to a drive towards self-overcoming, the will to grow, to master your own resistance, to become more fully what you're capable of being, independent of anyone's applause. Become who you are, he wrote, borrowing the phrase from the poet Pindar and making it his own personal demand. Not who's palatable. Not who photographs well to a hypothetical critic. Who you actually are, at full strength. Nietzsche also gave a name to the psychological trap you fell into on the way to not posting, ressentiment, a French term he uses for the corrosive habit of measuring your worth against an audience you've built entirely in your own head, most of whom are not actually watching, and some of whom you've invented. He thought this habit was one of the great quiet forces flattening people into smaller versions of themselves, not one dramatic defeat, but thousands of small, unposted photos. He wasn't asking you to become reckless or cruel, that's the cartoon version of his ideas. He was asking you to notice when you're editing yourself down for an audience that isn't in the room, and to ask whether that audience is worth the edit. So, the photo's still there. Nobody's actually judging it yet, that part you invented. What would you do with that gym selfie if the only person you were doing it for was the one who did the workout?